Hey, what's going on everyone? In this video, this is a tier ranking list video, so I'm going to be basically talking about all of the IEMs I've heard, and I'm going to rank them from S to F tier. And before we get started, let's go over each IEM, and then we'll talk a little bit about the sound, and then get into detail about how I feel about these IEMs. So here we have the 02 Chew 2 Tanchjin Bunny, Tingzu 1 or 2, EPZ P40, Truthier Gate, Cranier Reference, and then the Canper CP622B. So we got all 8 IEMs right here. So let's just randomly start off with each IEM and how it sounds. The Chew 2 has like a warmer sound, a little bit more closed in, smooth with the treble, nice and warm, and it has a good amount of mid bass and sub bass, but not too much. Slightly closed in sounding, a little bit more forgiving, not too harsh or sharp. 02, pretty bassy, has a good amount of bass, good mids, and the treble's a little rolled off. Tanchjin Bunny, it's sort of like a mild V shape where you hear a little bit more bass and mid treble, and then the vocals are slightly recessed. 1 or 2 is sort of like a U-ish type of shape sound, or a mild V shape. It does emphasize the bass and the treble a bit, and it has it still retains the mid range, so you don't lose out on too much vocal clarity or body. So pretty good. EPZ P40, sort of like a neutral bright, maybe even a V-shaped type of sound. The bass isn't too much, and the focus is on the mids and treble, and it has a lot of treble. The gate, pretty much a neutral, well-balanced sound from the bass up to the treble. Nothing really stands out. It's just smooth, clean and clear, solid. The reference, it has a pretty clean sound, pretty neutral. It doesn't exaggerate anything. The bass is nice and rumbly on the SpinFit W1 tips I have on. And the treble is very smooth. The mid-range is pretty much full-bodied for a reference set. And then the Canper CP622B, this is slightly colored. It has a bit of extra bass presence, full-bodied mids, very smooth, clear treble, a little, maybe a hair boosted, but nothing crazy. It's a detail monster. It just resolves very well. So yeah, and then this is like a neutral with bass boost type of sound. So now that I got the sound profile out of the way, what I like usually is a more neutral type of sound. If I want to have fun, I might listen to a more V-shaped type of sound. But at the end of the day, for me, a neutral sound with bass boost just sounds the most natural, most realistic. So that's what I'm basing my ranking on. And I did try a bunch of tips, and I will get into that a bit. So with the CP622B, you really need the CP100s because I could feel the bone conduction driver much better, and I feel those vibrations and those subtle nuances better. And then for the cranial reference, you could use pretty much any tip. I found the W1s to bring out the bass a little more. It sounded a little nicer with the bass. The gate, pretty much anything. I'm using some spin fits, but you could pretty much use whatever. And then the P40 is a little bit more tip dependent. It could increase the treble too much, or some tips could smoothen it out. But on here, I think I'm just using some stock tips. Same thing with the Wanner. Same thing with the Bunny. Same thing with the Gate. And True 2. All stock tips. They work just fine. So yeah, let's talk about which ones I like the most and which ones I'm kinda not the most excited about. So in terms of like last place or the ones I like the least, the 02, I didn't like it because it just had too much bass, not enough clarity in the treble. But the mids were full bodied. So a lot of people do like a warmer, more forgiving type of sound. These two have the warmest and most forgiving type of sound. The 02 and the Chew 2, it's not really harsh or fatiguing. It's pretty laid back. And yeah, so if you want that type of sound, I'd go with these. Smooth, clear, laid back, not too intense. And then the Wanner 2, I think, provides a really nice, sort of like a mild V-shaped sound, while the vocals aren't still too recessed, and everything sounds pretty good. So I can't find a fault in this IEM. It sounds like it's tuned, and I'm getting good amounts of clarity. And then the Bunny I like maybe slightly less than the Wanner 2. Just because the Wanner 2 sounds a little bit more realistic, a little less colored overall. Just because the Tantrum Bunny, the mids are a little less full bodied, and I like vocals a lot. So for me, the Bunny doesn't have the most well bodied mid range, and the mid treble, those sharp sounds are a little boosted. But what I love about the Bunny is the bass is very well separated compared to some of the other budget IEMs I talked about. So if you do want a little bit of a vocal recession, a mid treble emphasis, and a pretty good bass sound, these are solid. The Wanner 2, if you want a little bit more energy, just it being slightly colored while still sounding very good. I think I like the Wanner 2 more than the Bunny. And then we got the Gate. The Gate to me is just the most balanced sound, most versatile. It doesn't sound too harsh or sharp to me. It's well bodied, well textured, good separation for this price, and nothing really stands out. The bass sounds good, the mids are clean, treble smooth. So for me, this is my favorite like budget IEM. But if I had to pick one more, I'd go with the Wanner 2. Just because the Wanner 2 is a little bit more exciting in the bass and trebles. A little more fun to listen to. A little sharper sounding. So not as neutral as the Gate, but still pretty fun to listen to. And then the EP-ZP40, it literally almost hit the marks. But for me, it just had a little bit too much of a treble sound. The treble was a little too sharp no matter which tip I used. Other than that, the mid-range is spot on, very clean and clear. Instruments sound very convincing. The bass is slightly shallow, which I didn't like. I wish it had a little bit more of a texture, a rumble, and a definition pretty much. And then the reference I thought was a solid IEM, guys. Just provided one of my more favorite type of sounds where nothing stands out and everything has excellent imaging, excellent separation, and nothing sounded off to me about these. So I do think the Cranier reference beats out a lot of other pairs that cost even $500 or even $1,000 because the tunings on some of those are quite off. And I've heard a lot of those. I've reviewed a lot of those. And the reference is probably the best. It's just smooth and linear. Nothing's peaky. And then the Camper, again, detail monster. A lot of depth. Insane height. 3D, spatialness, everything. It is slightly colored, but I get the most enjoyment out of these. They just sound very fun to listen to. The type of sound they provide while being acceptable in terms of the tuning. More than acceptable. So yeah, that's how I pretty much would explain to you guys how these sound. I didn't want to go too much in detail because there's a lot of IEMs and I didn't want to repeat myself too much. So here's a final list. I put the Camper in S tier. It's just a special IEM. Reference in S tier. Amazing to listen to for all genres. It does the job. The Gate S tier because it's like one of the best neutral sounds you can get. EPZP40, it's like an A or a B, but I gave it the slight nod just because of what it's trying to do. And it does some things really, really well. But the EPZP40 is still lacking to me. Could have been a little better. And then the Wander 2 gets an A because I like listening to that IEM. Sounds pretty good. The Bunny gets a B grade. It has some tuning quirks. The bass is very well separated though, so maybe that's one of the main reasons I gave it put it in the B tier. And then in C tier, I put the Chew 2 and 02. They just sounded the most average to me. But like I said, if you want a more easygoing type of sound experience, more laid back, and you're sensitive to treble, these two are actually might be up your alley. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful, guys. If you guys have any questions, let me know. These were the IEMs I've heard pretty much recently. Some I've had for years, like this one. And then these two, the rest of all of these, I pretty much just heard recently. So that I figured I'd make this video. So yeah, take it easy, guys. Till the next review, and have a great day.